Good evening. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for coming. We have, Kevin is on his way. He's stuck in traffic. Kathy had an event this evening, so she couldn't be here. We'll be taking notes on our own. And I'm sure she'll watch it all and give us the right scoop. So because Kevin's delayed, we're actually going to skip around a little bit. But we have no emergency modifications to tonight's agenda, correct? And then if I can have a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll move to approve, but in whatever order you want.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, none opposed. Okay, so we're gonna skip 2.3 for the moment. I guess we can do 2.4. Board appointment of the superintendent as secretary to the Board of Education. Are there any questions?
Kathy's is quite good.
I'll move to approve that.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, none opposed. Public comments. I didn't get any sheets. Is anyone wanting to speak before we get to agenda items?
I would like to just make sure you guys all know about this. It's a United Gift Drive.
Yeah, tell us,
So
announce it so
Yeah,
people,
so-
and
because
for
the
the
people.
video as well.
Yeah, so we're doing it on Saturday at Nordoff, and what started out as like a little thing has actually turned into this huge thing. And Ojai Printworks is going to have their big truck there printing T-shirts to sell, and the proceeds will go to the fire victims. And then people can also donate on the Nordoff Parent Association site. So it's turning out to be a really good thing.
And in addition, so read just a little bit of that for people who are totally.
So
clueless
it's,
with this.
okay, so, in addition, we're also adding a craft fair, so, Topa Topa and Miramonte schools have a craft fair for their kids, which they didn't get to do this week, so we're adding that in, so kids will be selling their crafts there. So it's kinda turned into this big fun event, and
So
we're
this is
collecting
at
toys.
Nordoff,
At-
and the hours are?
Toy
From
and
10
gift
till
card
2.
drive. So you're
Yeah.
asking people to bring gifts for
And
toys?
Toys and gift cards,
Okay.
because the age range is so wide, and then we don't know what kids want, so.
Right.
I mean, we have a few like gift requests that we've gotten from kids, but so far we don't know.
Okay.
But really exciting thing happened today in Amazon. I emailed them last night and they called me today, and they are bringing a big truck full of stuff. So they are gonna go to all their fulfillment centers around Southern California and pick up stuff and deliver it on Monday. So
Wow.
we
Wow.
just need to coordinate where we're putting all this.
Right.
We will get to that on, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
incredible.
When
And
we
so
get
for
to it.
people who can't attend, they can purchase gift cards and make cash donations online, right?
Yes, yeah, and people have actually been purchasing things like back east and shipping them to my house. So I go home and there's Amazon boxes on my front porch from, I don't know who they're from, but they're on my front porch. So yeah, lots of good stuff, so.
Thank you so
That's
much,
great.
Maggie.
Yeah, I know, it's turned out to be really good. And it's all the schools' event, so it's like a Ojai USD event. It's not just one school, it's just for everybody, and it's been really good. Yeah, and also the food handing out at Nordoff is going really good. I've been
Okay.
working on that all week, and people are just so appreciative that the school district is doing that for the families. Like, it means a lot, so. You guys are awesome. And proud to be part of this school district, so
You're all awesome.
thank you.
Thank you very much, Maggie.
Thank you.
And that information has been advertised to the schools too. So we got that flyer and we sent it to all our staff and. to all
Your
our
staff has
families.
actually been amazing. They're all
Everybody. But we're trying to get the word out, to get people to show up and pitch in. And it seems to be going great.
Yeah,
So, thank you.
yeah.
What time is it again?
From 10 till 2,
10 to 2.
yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay,
I'll just actually say one thing real quick. I love that we have a unified gift drive, or a unified. It is certainly OHI unified, the entire district, and the PTOs and PTAs and NPA are all supporting. But Maggie, this absolutely would not be happening without your leadership in this. So I really do want to thank you. And again, it's a big thing that it's become, and it's because of your leadership with this. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Absolutely.
okay. Special presentation, 6.1, district impact and response to the Thomas Fire.
Sure. So I'm going to share a bit about how the fire directly has impacted us, about some decision making that took place over the past week and a half. I love that we have people in the audience, and so there's going to be a few people who will call on to be able to share a few things the district is either doing or is making available for students. But I also welcome if there are public comments at any point, as well as just an opportunity to kind of have a moment for folks in our district to talk about this just incredible event that's taken place over the past 10 days. So first thing I'll say, obviously the same thing that our firefighters have been sharing, that we've been incredibly fortunate that their first priority was preservation of life. Despite 240,000 plus acres that have been burnt, there's been only 2 lives lost. Of course, any number more than 0 is too many. But they were just absolutely incredible that they were able to, despite this incredibly rapid moving fire, being able to maintain, preserve life the way they did. So we're extremely grateful for them and thankful that we are fortunate that I'm going to be sharing some still stark numbers, but the numbers are of families who have lost homes and not families who have lost loved ones. So the number, though, for our district is that we do have 26 kids who have been impacted directly by this fire with loss of home. That's 14 families, and I've received questions about where those kiddos are coming from or what schools they're at. It's really across our district. So obviously Upper Ojai is the region of this community it's been hardest hit. Rebecca and I just came from the meeting that the fire department is holding up there. They said that in the Upper Ojai area that they've lost 100 buildings, 100 properties. I believe they're saying residences, right?
They said structures, but judging by being up there, I'm pretty
Right.
sure it's close to 100 houses.
Yeah. So they said that of all the area impacted by the fire, that Upper Ojai has the highest loss rate on a per person basis, on a relative to the overall community. That obviously Upper Ojai has been extremely hard hit, and again that shows in our district. And I received information from Ventura Unified. They had about 20 staff members who lost their home down there. And about the same number as us, about 25 kiddos who are now without home. Oxnard Union High School District also had about 20 employees, and so really what we're seeing across West Ventura County, just devastating loss. Really for us, though, we're fortunate that again no staff members lost their home. Of course, no one in this area lost their life, but we do have families that have been very significantly impacted. We're going to talk, actually we'll jump right now because we do have 2 special guests with us, and so Rebecca Kirkland, our special ed director, as well as Janine Murphy, who's our mental health clinician, talking about what we're going to be doing for both those kiddos as well as everyone in our district, because obviously the impact of this fire goes far beyond those who have lost their home, but we have really obviously significant need in this community right now. And so Rebecca, if you can just help share a little bit about what services are available for kids in case there happen to be anyone watching, we can get the word out even more so than we already have. What's available right now over this break, as well as what's going to be available and what we'll be doing once we return from break in January.
Sure. We have, Janine and I have been working together
I'm
to
gonna
make
just
sure-
move the mic a little bit towards you and
Sorry.
have you speak up for those who are at home. Yeah.
Janine and I have been working to make sure that we would have counseling services available to any staff, students, or families who have been affected by the fire, either now or certainly when they return to school. We'll have people at every site the first day, making sure that not only the students who have been directly impacted, but the kiddos when they come back and see that some of their friends might not be there, or may be sad, or so we're just trying to make sure that we have enough resources in place. Janine has been working really hard with the MFT interns and our psychologists, and making sure that they're all ready to go. We will meet beforehand to, get our immediate attack plan for return to school. But if all of the principals have reached out to their families and they've had the information to contact me if they know of anybody who is in need of counseling services, and then Janine will make sure that we have enough people available. So we have not yet heard from anybody yet. I'm assuming people are still out of town or still a little too overwhelmed. But I suspect that as things start to settle down, I know a lot of those emotions are going to come forth.
You know, I didn't even think of too, I mean, I know a couple of families their homes are fine, but they can't actually live in their homes because of the
Right.
smoke damage.
Exactly.
So
Mhm.
that,
Any family that's been impacted that way, whether, they've been directly impacted with the loss of home or not able to live there, but other people who just are, really traumatized by this. I mean, this has been a horrific event and it's been completely devastating. And I know, like, I have not been, other than, being evacuated, I'm perfectly fine, but, it is sad to drive back and forth to Upper Ojai and back every day. It just makes you feel sad inside. And so I know that a lot of families will be impacted and will need to deal with those feelings. So we will be ready to go. We also have backup from VCBH if we have, more students and we're able to handle in, a reasonable amount
Ventura
of
County
time.
Behavioral Health.
Yes. So we do have a backup there. We've been in touch with them as well. So they've offered their services to come up and help if we need any additional resources. But this district is pretty well staffed in terms of, mental health, needs. So we're hoping that we can meet that with our own staff.
I know, I mean, it's not nearly at the level of losing your home, but I think many, if not most, of the families in our district left their homes not knowing
Right,
that they would be able to come back to their homes.
right.
So that's draining, right?
It is,
Right.
it's a very, there are a lot of ways that people are impacted. There's not a single person in this entire valley that has not been greatly impacted by this tragedy. So we're, ready to, we'll have a presence at every site, and just, try to do whatever we can to make it a little bit easier for the families.
do you think we should have a little flyer or something at that event on Saturday that just says if they need any services to reach out to you? I mean, just like
a
a
good
half,
idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
a
good
half a
idea.
Great
sheet
idea.
or something?
And I'll be there in the morning
Do
too.
we have a centralized web presence for all of these resources as well?
No, we don't. That's something that we're working on right now. So we've been receiving resources from both Rebecca and Janine, as well as from Ventura County Behavioral Health, and then obviously a number of other related services from VCOE and going on to different state agencies that are helping with actually the recovery piece as well. So I've been in contact with the city trying to figure out who exactly, obviously when it comes to our services for kiddos, when it comes to behavioral health and mental health support, we need to have a presence up tomorrow, and we will. As far as the broader recovery site, that's something that we're trying to coordinate with the city and make sure that we're not doing duplicative work.
At a minimum, we could just contact our staff.
Mhm.
So that
Exactly. Yeah.
makes sense.
Mhm.
Anything else you wanted to?
No, just if anyone hears of anyone that needs any services, please have them anyone can contact me, and I can give my cell phone out if people would like to have that. I'm happy to give that out.
Thanks, Rebecca. So we also we have a few administrators here, Becky, Carol, and Javier. Thanks for being here. Who reached out to families who they both, there's been frequent communication coming up from the district throughout the past week and a half, but also direct communication with families that they either had rumored to be or knew based on address that potentially a victim directly of loss from this fire. And so we have, again, made contact with those families or, well, actually Javier and Carol, I want to make sure I say that correctly. We have actually made direct contact, not just leaving voicemails, right?
As soon as we heard, we wanted to confirm, so we made the connection, and once we confirmed, then I passed it on to you and
Mhm.
letting you know that those families were confirmed, that it wasn't probably.
And so during that communication, we're also making them aware of, again, the fact that they don't need to wait until we return to having schools open to receiving those services. So we're making sure that that's being communicated to those families that, again, services are available. But We've had quite a few communications go out to the community recently, and we have one more. It's going to be going out tomorrow, just giving an update on stats from this week, as well as, again, reminder of these services available. So,
And I know this isn't related to the district really, but I haven't heard, I mean, is FEMA gonna be bringing trailer homes for some affected families? Do we have any idea? Interesting.
yeah, I don't know.
I think they just declared a disaster like yesterday or the day before.
Well, that's pretty early. I mean, because I had a lot of family in Katrina, so I know that was really important, so that you could, hopefully,
Right.
if you could get some kind of a home on your property, if it's livable, I don't know
Right.
that, but for them to be
I did
able
see
to.
someone on Facebook was donating really elaborate tents, that were
Mhm.
like multi-room
those.
tents.
I also got a flyer from Ventura County. I'm not sure who sent it to me, but somebody sent it to me. It was about housing. And the flyer was in English and Spanish.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I know that they're working on that at the county level, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And I pass that on to the families, obviously.
So I want to make sure that we begin the conversation talking about the kiddos and talking about our families, because obviously that's most important. I'll transition a bit into our actual district properties. Before I do, though, I apologize to put Tanan and Amy on the spot here. Tanan, I believe Norm's retired, right? So he's been,
No, he's back at San, he had just
Really?
signed up for Santa Paula.
oh wow.
Yeah.
So do you, again, apologize I didn't talk to you before this, but have your husbands been both out there fighting this fire?
Working nonstop.
Wow.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you very much. We
So,
certainly
it's just-
appreciate the sacrifice he's made, and that we know, again, that so many have been making.
We have a lot of firefighter families, don't we?
Yeah, yeah, we absolutely do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been incredible. Transitioning to our school district, so fire broke out about 6:30 on Monday evening. I got the call from the Red Cross by about 7:15, so the Red Cross was on this. They knew that there was this potential and that this was a fire that posed real risk once it began. And so by about 8 o'clock, actually, Red Cross was on site in Nordoff on Monday night, beginning to set up the evacuation center. Dave Munson and I were the two primary contacts working with them. I really want to thank Dave Munson as well as David Rogers. Those were two leaders in our district who each spent at least 100 hours, not exaggerating, over the past week and a half, supporting primarily Red Cross, but also the entire district. They were absolutely incredible. Red Cross did such a great job supporting this community, but they also are made up primarily of volunteers, and there were at times a challenge when it came to leadership from the evacuation center. And whenever there was a gap, there really was one of the two Daves stepping in and taking that leadership role. So whether or not it was Dave Rogers going above and beyond to get Wi-Fi access to to those who were at the center and to set up a TV, just try to make life a little bit more manageable during that time, to Dave Rogers and Dave Munson making the call to bring in air filtration devices when we ultimately couldn't get approval from the Red Cross. The district just said, it needs to be done. We need to make sure that's healthy to be inside right now. And so district brought those in after searching about a 1,000-mile radius to actually find the equipment to be able to eventually get it. So it took a while, but both those men did just an incredible job. And not just them, but we also had the entire custodial staff at Nordoff continue to work throughout the entire disaster. They, not a single one of them took time off. They put in their 8 hours plus on rotational shifts to make sure that showers were available, to make sure that we were restocking bathrooms, that when we had trash, that it really was, again, trying to be as presentable and livable as a site as we could make it during that time. So truly thank Rick Carrion as well as the entire custodial staff at Nordoff for maintaining that. As well as Michelle Gorell also was very involved in the women's bathroom and women's locker room area. So let's see, we're Monday night, about 10:30 is when we started having the first people go to the evacuation center. I'm sure for most of those in town that you saw on both Tuesday and Wednesday is when it was most full, that there was not many parking spots available. I mean, it was something that was very, very utilized by this community. Again, a real collaborative effort between the Red Cross, our district, obviously County Fire, and the city. So we're thankful that we were able to make that available. We certainly have learned some lessons, and as much as I hate to speculate to this, but I think that we all know that there's the possibility that we may have flooding or mudslide issues in the near future, and so we'll make sure the lessons learned here will be communicated amongst those groups and make sure that we're ready if we need to have Nordoff be used as an evacuation site again in the near future. As going from there, we ended up canceling school about 3:45 on Tuesday morning, not knowing what the condition of the fire was. So I appreciate all of our staff who are in this room who helped get that message out. Obviously, that was a big communication effort, something that we, to my knowledge, have only done once prior, and that was just this past spring for the rain in at least 5 years plus, to my knowledge. So again, real communication effort going out from all of our staff. Obviously, maintained our schools closed the rest of the week, and then on Friday, we were the first district to make that call that really we were not going to be able to have our schools open this week. And so, as I know everyone in this room knows, we've been now lost 8 instructional days as of today. Tomorrow will be 9th, and then we're just going to wait until we return from the winter break. I have been in contact with the county and the state, who have assured me that we will not, or will be in a hold harmless for these lost instructional days, which means that we will not lose financial resources and we will not be required to make up those days. Obviously, we know that losing 9 instructional days, 5% of the school year, will have an impact on students' learning. And so we have had our teachers reaching out to families to let them know about resources, especially at the elementary level, various softwares that we have available for students to be able to continue working on things over this prolonged break. We're also going to be working with our administration team and our unions to determine whether or not, what additional things we can be doing to try to support student learning through the spring semester because of this disruption. So at this time, though, again, the state has given us all assurances that it will not be a requirement from their side to actually add any instructional days to the calendar this year. Okay. On Friday, when the reason that we made the call ultimately that we need to maintain schools closed this week, obviously in addition to still being in mandatory evacuations in many of our sites and looking at the continued threat, was I did tour the facilities with our insurance coverage, our insurance carrier, and they frankly were quick to see that we were the worst impacted school district in the county. They'd been at Mupu earlier in the morning. I had been working with Ventura Unified already at that point. They said there's no question our facilities actually took the worst from smoke damage of any of the sites in the county. And so we began at that time working with our insurance carrier and trying to get a contractor under contract to be able to begin the remediation. You'll see later in the agenda tonight, we do have a statement of declaring it a state of emergency by the board, which allows us to bypass the requirements for a full competitive bid for such a large contract. This contract is going to be north of $1 million for sure. It could be $2 to $3 million range to do this cleanup over the next 2 weeks. It's truly just incredible. The very fortunate news is our insurance is picking up all of it with no deductible from us. We had the first initial, just so everyone knows, we're insured first and foremost by the Ventura County School Self-Funding Authority, and that's an organization made up of all the school districts in the county, and so we all together self-insure the initial amount of potential loss, whether or not that loss is from car accidents or if it's from property damage like this. But then once it gets beyond a certain amount, we say none of the school districts want to hold that liability, and so then we actually get regular commercial insurance above a certain amount. I believe in this case it's above a $250,000 amount. So we do have to work with both our local VCS SFA insurance as well as the larger carrier. And that larger carrier was out today touring our sites. Their intention was to go to all 8 sites, tour the interior of our classrooms as well as other areas. They made it to 2 and said there's no need to continue touring the facilities. So they knew that this was a legitimate insurance claim. And so very happy to report that we actually are under contract with the contractor, and they were at Nordoff this morning beginning cleanup. They're going to
Can
be.
you talk a little bit, because I mean, obviously, I feel like in this room, we're fine, and in my house, which is, kind of near Topa, I feel. So what exactly is, I mean, obviously outside, there's ash and the roofs, you have to wash down the roofs and
Right.
the windows and stuff, but is there more to it than that?
Yeah, so
And
unfortunately.
while you're talking
Yeah.
about that, the smoke's coming back and forth.
Right.
So are we finished with the
Right.
damage?
Right.
Right, so that was something that delayed our ability to start until today. Obviously, it's still bad, but it was much worse on Friday, I think was the day when we were at 560 or whatever we ended up getting up to. So they've said that any work that would have been prior to today would have been work that needed to be replicated, again next week. They feel at this point and with the hygienist testing the air quality, they believe that they can begin the work now, and that's not going to be required to be duplicated. So the impact to our district, obviously the biggest one is smoke, although it's also from ash that's gotten into the ventilation systems. Unfortunately, we do have a practice because we have a lot of old buildings, and we have windows that are at ceiling height. Often that we have many classrooms that had windows that were left open Monday night. You'll see throughout the entire district, almost every bathroom window, we have some level of access of a bathroom window that's left open overnight. And so we sent our grounds maintenance team that were able to come in midweek last week. We wanted to shut off all irrigation, make sure that we weren't consuming water at the district that was needed to fight fires. And so we shut down our irrigation. While we were doing that, we had the custodial and grounds team looking at any window they could see open to close. Even with them doing that, when I toured on Friday last week, we still saw a number of classrooms that were open at that point, so ones that they didn't have an opportunity to get to. And so we know that many of the rooms had open windows at that point. It's very different than in here where we were really actually pretty well sealed off.
Also, all of our air conditioning heating units are the direct access. I mean, you can hear the wind come through
Right.
on any given day. It's the old-fashioned open, to the outside.
Exactly.
So
So
that
not
even if the
only did
windows
that
are
cause a lot of
closed, yeah.
ash and dust and smoke to come in, but that also means that entire unit has to be extremely thoroughly cleaned, so that way the next time it's turned on, it doesn't just blow everything back in. And so,
Even though they're gonna be replaced in the next, half
Right,
in the
right.
next 3 months.
So the work is everything from replacement of air filters in the HVACs to actually clearing out the ventilation systems. To again, in this room it doesn't smell that bad, although I think that there's a chance that all of us are getting kind of used to the smell, and so we may not notice it in here. But in rooms that have really been damaged, it's not just a matter of purifying the air, which we were doing that here for the past 2 days, and that's one of the things that also helped this room. But it's not just about purifying the air, although that's part of it. They call it scrubbing the air, which is the much higher level commercial grade filtration, different than the homemade filtrations that I have right now at my house with the I'm sure some of you guys have as well, the fan and the vent filter. So they're going to be doing the full scrub, but then also anything that's porous that has the ability to absorb smoke does with this type of damage. And so they'd be going into classrooms and cleaning the carpets, which again, fortunately, this will be something that I think our teachers will very much appreciate, that we're getting such a quality cleaning. It's something that maybe they haven't had for a little while. But cleaning carpets is going to be, even these types of ceiling tiles really absorb and hold on to the smoke. And so you could clean the air, filter it out, do the cleaning on the ground, and cleaning the desktops, which they'll be doing as well. But you'd still have an odor coming from those tiles that would be something that could cause, under prolonged exposure, headaches and other medical impacts from the smoke. So it is a very intense process to get back to the level of where we can have kids safely in there for 7 or 8 hours a day and have staff working in there for that prolonged period. So that's the process. So as I briefly stated, they will also go around into every area of the classroom, be wiping it down, which I'll just say I was a little embarrassed when they were walking through. They were testing different areas to see how much dust was on the windowsills and other areas, and I knew that some of that dust was not just from the past week. But they certainly were able to differentiate what was from ash and what had been blown in from those the window units for HVAC and that sort of thing. And so unfortunately, again, many of our classrooms have a very significant amount of soot and ash that we're able to blow in through either the porous HVAC system itself, or windows that were left open, or even in my office where there was no window left open, but just the historic 80-year-old building does not have dual pane windows or very tight seals, and so even from that, it was able to come in pretty significantly. And so they will be taking proper cleaning agents and actually cleaning every surface in the classroom.
And do they test at the end?
Yeah, so there is a hygienist that will come back in and will actually, again, confirm that the rooms have been properly cleaned and that they are at safe exposure levels. Absolutely. Yeah.
Is that consistent with what other districts are doing? Are you guys in touch with other districts on their measures?
Yeah, so this company that we're working with was hired from our self-funding authority, the insurance agency that all the school districts use. They just are wrapping up San Paulo. San Paulo, because of the way the smoke was blowing, was able to do it a little bit quicker. But they did 3 campuses down there and are finishing up on Sunday. And frankly, they said that, of course, they are confident in the quality of their work, but it was also a job that they were doing quite quickly, and they appreciate that they have a little bit more time with us to be able to be as thorough as they would like to be. But they did 3 for San Paulo Unified. They're working on Mupu and Santa Clara. Ventura has such a larger infrastructure that they initially were taking some of the responsibility on themselves. I think that was part of the reason also, frankly, the decision ultimately later on this week to cancel for the remainder of the week was as this company and VCS SFA became more involved in the assisting them with assessing their campuses. They realized that there really does need to be professional grade cleanup, and so to my knowledge, at minimum, Sunset and the 2 campuses that are on the avenue are going to receive the same level and quality of restoration. I don't know about the rest of their sites, but this is the main company that the insurance company is going through.
Is this ServPro or who is it?
It's ASR, All Seasons Restoration. They're based out of Oxnard. They have about 70 employees. They said they're actually going to have about 150 up here when it's at full steam next week. So they're actually bringing in a number of staff from Texas and from Florida who have experience with restoration when you have, natural catastrophes out there that present the possibility of mold or other similar sorts of things that you have to make sure that the air quality is, again, restored to appropriate levels. Yeah.
Sorry, I know
This
this
is-
is cute, okay.
Yeah.
Were you, it sounds like you're talking about indoor only, is that correct?
That's
For
what we've
this
talked about
com-
so far, but that's a great question. So
Oh.
yes, so they're also going to be pressure washing every outdoor surface as well. The area, that you currently have an inch of ash is going to be cleaned as well, because obviously
Yeah.
that's one of their areas of concern is cross-contamination of a student
Right.
is walking outside on the playground and they bring it in with them on their shoes as soon as they walk in.
Right,
So,
okay.
or they're eating on those picnic tables. And so absolutely there'll be pressure washing, and we'll also be cleaning the outside as well.
Do you know how, I mean, like obviously at home, I do the same thing, right? I can power wash my picnic table, but is the ash in the ground then, and they're not picking it up on their shoes, or are they vacuuming things up? I don't know enough about.
I think, my neighbor was just explaining that, of course, the ground is loving the ash.
Yeah.
You know, and it to be watered into it, it just absorbs into the ground, and then once you put water on it, it's,
Okay.
yeah.
I don't know actually if they will be vacuuming up, but I absolutely agree. I was just on the call with the city council member, and he was saying that's what the city council is going to be recommending for folks to properly remove the ash is by actually just spraying it into grassy areas or other ground area.
Water.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just
Well-
gonna say, do we get a pass on
Yeah.
the?
Well, luckily we have Casitas water now,
Right,
not Golden
exactly.
State.
Right. But yeah, that's the recommended method is they have currently the city has a blower prohibition at all times for the next week. They're exploring actually extending that out because that really is not the proper method of eliminating the ash, is to kick it back into the air.
Going nuts. I mean,
Really?
it literally, cars were stopping because they thought there was another fire.
Really? Wow. Yeah.
The guy's just idiot.
Yeah. So, pressure washing and using water to send it into the grass or into again porous ground surfaces is the actually best method. But for them, because they want to avoid the cross contamination, I don't know if they will be actually vacuuming it up. It's possible. So for our staff around the room, you can help us get the word out, but we'll be sending out in that email tomorrow. We'll also be notifying all teachers to try to, by Monday, get into their classroom if there are any items that are either of a personal nature or of a high value that they would want to make sure is secured prior to 20 to 50 people coming in working in each of these classrooms. So we'll make sure that communication goes out and that all staff know that they are able to go in for short periods. We have available masks for anyone who doesn't have a mask but is able to, if a teacher wants to get into their classroom or a staff member wants to get into their office to be able to, again, secure or take with them any valuables or other items that they want to make sure are not available when the restoration team comes in.
And they are giving away free masks at Vaughn's and at, over in Miners Oaks too.
In the hospital.
At the library.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you talked about the communication, I looked, so we did get the email from our teachers that went in spam.
Oh,
So
really?
I'm wondering, I wonder, you know, we all like, I think I'm signed up for everything, I'm signed up for VC alerts, I'm signed up for everything, remind, you know, everything in all the school, but then you just, do we know, like, when we send out an email, how it's being received by the servers? Like, you know, we're Gmail and it's going into our spam.
You know, when we do the phone calls out, we get a report back how many of those phone calls made it, like somebody picked up. I don't know if we get one for the email, I'd have to look. So, and I don't know if it could tell if it went out to somebody's spam. I don't know.
Well, maybe we
that's
could
it.
tell if they opened it, you know, which
Yeah,
would
I don't
be-
know, I can look at that and get back to you.
Or
Is there
even
a
just
way-
a robocall that says, be sure to check your, you know,
Right.
we have sent out emails, if you haven't received one, check your spam
Sure.
folders, that
Is
might
there
be.
a possibility, you know how you can send a message, an email out that you then have to say, I received this?
Oh, like a receipt that you got it.
A receipt that you get, can we
I
set
don't know if
that
they
up
can do that through that
on
automated.
that program?
I'll find out.
So Cheryl, it does segue, so we actually haven't talked about communication yet, but why don't you talk a little bit, Cheryl, about the communication that we had go out to staff as well as communication from staff to families at this point?
So Nordhoff was the one to start, so they had shared with us that they'd already reached out to their families, and so we knew that we should follow suit. It was a little bit different at each site, so I think at Matilaha, you guys did an automated phone
Yeah,
call.
We've been doing emails, phone calls, and then for those families, like I mentioned earlier, that were directly affected, a personal call, just to make sure and to verify.
To
that
follow up,
it was-
right.
It was accurate.
So for the elementaries, we created a letter that we sent out to all the teachers, and what we asked, we kind of had 3 areas to cover. We asked that they, at a minimum, just let the kids know that they were safe, because at the elementary level, kids really, especially young kids, they kind of associate their teacher with the site, right? And so they were worried about their teachers. And then also to let them know a little bit, especially at the elementary level, as Andy was saying before, that we do have some pretty great online tools that kids could be using during this prolonged time that they're at home. So to give them some advice about the types of things that they could be doing for instructional activities while they're home. And then lastly, to reach out if they needed any help or support or if they were affected. So we did get some information. Any family that let us know that they were suffering or that they had lost anything, there was a personal phone call to that family, either on behalf of the teacher reaching out to the student or the principal reaching out to the student. And that's part of how we've collected the names in the list that we have, so.
How would, sometimes I have to say, it's so monolithic trying to communicate with the district, you know, you just get this, you know, voicemail or whatever. How are people communicating to us? How do we make ourselves available to them?
At least what I've seen go out, it's been recommended to send an email. To send an
whom?
email to the principal.
Okay,
Like, I'm a parent, so the ones I've gotten have all said, please email the principal if you have anything going on with your family and you
But I
need
think
support.
what Javier was saying, once you got a name like, yes, so-and-so's house burnt down, a
That's
person
great.
called.
A
and
person
spoke.
called,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I had heard that there was some idea that potentially, I think at the high school, they were actually gonna call everybody and then
So
decided not to, but I think that would have been fabulous.
I think what they did at the high school level, because I saw their list, is they sort of identified everybody that were in key areas that of concern, and then they reached out in some way to check on those families. So, because I know on their list they had lots of people that were confirmed safe, for example. So I think that's how they, like I said, they were the ones that started the outreach much earlier than the rest of the sites. So I think that's how they went about reaching out to families at Nordhoff, identifying who lived in areas of concern and then reaching out to them one by one to find out if they were safe.
Yeah, because as we all learned over the week, there was so many wrong
Right.
information that was wrong.
I can't tell you how many times I heard Summit, Topa, and San Antonio had all burnt down.
Yeah, Macaulay's and the post office building and there's
We were at
things
the high
that-
school when they said that the bonds had burned down and
Right.
I had just bought it. I got the last beer out of it.
So, just so you know, alcohol's not allowed on the Nordhoff campus?
Take me in, Shelley.
Is that the bottle that I found at the Matilda campus?
Took our trailer to
Right
every
on my
campus.
office.
I'm changing my vote later.
So certainly, again, opportunities like this show us the need for continued improved communication. Kevin, I think your point well taken, that what we tried to have take place at the elementary level, that level of correspondence from administration or teachers at the high school did not go out to all families yet. We're working with Dave, and should have been done sooner, but we will work on trying to have an appropriate way to reach out to all kiddos.
It's just one thing I wonder is maybe we could create an email for the district called like emergency@OUSD and then it goes to like 10 people. And the chances of somebody, because I've, we all had experience when teachers go on vacation, you can send an email and you'll never hear back for months if they're just not checking. So to have something where people feel like, if I send something to this email, a human being will see this right now, and if it's, that there will be some response.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, that is.
We wrote it down.
You always do.
We do have a lot of students also, I know at Miners Oaks, that do not have check internet and do not, a lot. I'd say in my class, probably a third of the kids don't have Wi-Fi, don't check email, they all have a cell phone.
I think Teresa's.
No, I mean that in a good way. I was meaning that
Right.
positive. So I think if you send something.
Teresa's very aware of that.
Yeah.
And again, I'm a Miners Oaks parent now, so I get all the communication, but she has really probably the most sent out texts and information, both through Remind 101, emails, and then also phone calls.
Yeah.
So I know that she's really using multiple avenues to reach out to families.
Do we have an opt-in notification system by text? I know at the colleges we have, it's called Connect You or something like that. And you opt in, you give it your cell phone
Right.
number, and then I know, because Ventura College had to close, and we had issues at Oxnard as well. And so we were able to send out batch text messages to everybody who had opted in.
Yeah,
If
so
I
that's
opted into everything, it was.
That's Remind 101. So
Okay.
parents have to opt
Alright.
into that one. But then we also have the automated system that's in our student information system. So anybody that we have an email for in our student information system or a phone number for, those are how the automated phone calls go out or the automated emails go out. And then we didn't even mention it, but Facebook, a lot went out on Facebook through everybody's PTAs as well. So we did really try our best to get information out in multiple ways.
And thank you to Javier for helping translate many of those communications. Absolutely.
You talk faster than anyone I've ever heard.
Faster
If you
in
were
Spanish.
wow, yeah.
Mike, I'll take it.
Should be one of those people on our lawyers at the end of the radio ad.
Your voice was a lot better than the robot voice. The robot voice was really bad.
I don't think I got a robot.
I got the robot voice
Yeah.
too from
Yeah.
Florida, from different sites, yeah.
Don't know about that. We'll look into that. So those are the main areas, student impact and resources available to them, facility impact and our direction forward. Communication, the last few areas are kind of some quick hitters, but one of the things I want to make sure we hit on, Maggie already did, but talking about the toy drive and the event this Saturday again, 10 to 2 at Nordhoff. Very grateful for all of our parent-teacher organizations, associations who are helping to support it. Also something that I think we have already mentioned here once or twice, but this week we have, beginning on Tuesday, we're providing meals at Nordhoff. Tomorrow is the last day that we're going to be doing that, and it's available tomorrow for all families in the valley. You don't need to be an OUSD student. There's no need to show ID or anything else. Anyone that comes, we will be providing a meal for. We've had a great partnership with Suzanne Lugatoff, our former Director of Nutrition, who's now at Oxnard Elementary. Her team has been preparing the meals and helping or allowing Julie Chesson, our current Nutrition Director, bring them up. And then we also have had a number of donations that have come in over the past week or so that have also been available to families just to pick up. So the Inspire group has done a lot of things over the past week and a half. They've done many things over the past 2 years for us, but they even some smaller things like making available little toiletry kits. And so when a family does come in and pick up a lunch from Nordhoff, they're able to also get a toiletry kit to take with them as well. So we're encouraging anyone to go to Nordhoff tomorrow between 10 and noon to be able to access that meal as well as, again, some of those other services.
10 and 2.
No, so tomorrow for the food
The
pickup
food
is
is
10,
10 to noon?
Yeah,
Okay.
10 to noon for the food pickup tomorrow, Friday.
tomorrow,
That's
right,
our
right,
last
Saturday,
day.
I'm
So we provided that for, again, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of this week, trying to meet the need, knowing that some families unfortunately are obviously struggling, especially at this time. But that throughout the year, that often the meals that we're providing at school may be one of the only full or nutritionally balanced meals that a child has access to. And so we want to make sure that despite the interruption in school service, that those families most in need still have the opportunity to have a fully well-balanced meal available to them. Also, again, just some of the ways, just like Maggie stepped up and helped lead this initiative for the Saturday, we also had a group that stepped up and organized a first responder lunch for everyone a couple days ago. And so they actually were doing that out of Chaparral. I'm not sure what the final count was on meals. Did you ever?
I didn't get a funny count.
It was,
Maggie?
we did over 300 meals.
Really? Wow.
And over 700 gift bag or snack bags.
Actually, I didn't realize you were involved in that one as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so the snack bags are actually still going out to
Wow, that's
people
great.
because we have so many. And we brought dinner up to Upper Ojai last night and
Wow.
fed the people up there up at Stagecoach. So
That's great. Well, thank you for that as well.
a lot of meals out.
Yeah, absolutely. Last thing I'll just mention, going back to our loss of instructional days. Obviously, at the elementary level, while still certainly a challenge, a little bit easier to adjust planning for the upcoming weeks and months as we adjust to the loss of those days. Nordhoff, though, was scheduled to have finals take place on obviously the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of this week. In fact, today would have been 2 finals. We are working with teachers. What it looks like is likely, although this hasn't been finalized. When it is finalized, we'll get the communication out. But is to have the finals take place the second week that families return. So that would be, or at students return. So that would be the week of the 8th. Finals taking place on the 10th, 11th, and 12th. So we're, again, trying to give some time for students to be able to adjust back in. And we have been working with our counselors, make sure that no students will have this impact their ability for college applications. Remember, it wasn't that long ago that actually our semester did end right about this time. So this is very common throughout the county and state for semesters to end in that mid to late January even time period. So even though this was an adjustment to what people were expecting and certainly be an adjustment for our staff, it's not going to have an impact on students with their college applications.
And we're confident that, I know you said that like a 2-week process for cleaning, that it actually can begin. I mean, because I sort of feel like every day you think, oh, it's getting better, and then it gets worse again in the afternoon.
Yeah.
But they have said, yes, they'll, at least interior, they can start with the
Right.
interior.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, they've started at Nordhoff today and Miramai. They're starting tomorrow.
And the final schedule sounds very fair, but that also really cuts into the instructional days for the next semester.
But they used to be that short anyway, is what he was saying, because we used to end that semester.
Right.
There's no
But
question
then
the loss
school
of the
used to
nine-
go
Oh,
a little bit longer.
yeah.
Well, so we actually at Nordhoff, I believe we're in our 3rd year this year of doing the semester ending prior to winter break. When we made that adjustment, we really didn't make a change to the start or end of school. Our school year is about the same as it's always been. We just decided that we'd have a shorter first semester. So we have 180 instructional days. What we used to have was as close to a 90-90 split between the first and second semester. What we do now is actually about a 78-day first semester and a 102-day second semester. So they're very uneven. Because Nordhoff is the size it is, we have so few single semester classes that it doesn't really impact us the way that a larger school has many more offerings that are single semester length. And so what we'll do now is actually have 2 semesters that are far closer to equal length. So it'll be closer to kind of an 86 sort of day calendar. But yeah, there's no question that the loss of 9 instructional days is going to have an impact on being able to deliver instruction.
I did have one other opinion I'd like to share on the communications.
Sure.
And that is, there was a day or two last week where the cell tower was damaged.
Yeah.
And it worked out okay, but if the timing had been different and we had had kids at school,
Mm-hmm.
it could have been chaos.
Yeah.
And so I know the city determined they didn't want to do another cell tower, but I think the safety of the community is more important than really anything else. And if they don't want to do anything, I think we need to look into talking to a utility about a cell tower to have some redundancy.
Mm.
If it goes down, we can't be without.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no question. That's a great point, Thane, as far as the,
Because no one has landlines anymore.
Right,
I mean, it'd be
yeah.
okay if it were, you know.
I think many parts of Myers Oaks going toward Rice Road, that they were without internet for 3 or 4 days. I know that down in Casilla Springs, that area, they were without internet and cell issues as well, cell tower issues for multiple days. And so that was one of the reasons we try to get communication out in so many channels, but there's no question there were still people missed because of the challenges in utility infrastructure. Absolutely.
Right, and that was, I went on Monday night, Tuesday morning, I went over to Nordoff at 2 in the morning to
Mhm.
ask, you know, because we have a dorm, and I hadn't heard anything about whether to evacuate those students. And they said, I said, well, how will they find me to tell me?
Right.
And they said, oh, they'll call all the landlines in that area. And I said, well, we're without power. We have no power in that neighborhood. And he's like, oh, you know, so it's kind
Yeah.
of like, yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah,
the
we
thing.
didn't
Even
have
with
power.
even those few who have landlines, nearly none of them have the old, rotodial phones. Because if you have a landline, but it's a cordless phone that requires a battery, when you lose power, you also are losing access to that phone. Yeah.
But even when you lose power, even on a, I don't think
I
the
think the old ones.
The old
were-
ones
yeah.
that carry.
The old
the
ones,
charge
you still-
through the
Oh.
line.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
but in the, I guess, early nineties, when we had the earthquake,
Yeah.
I was able to get through, but I had to dig through the garage to find an old, even in the nineties, so.
Right.
I imagine, and, life has changed.
Right.
We were without power for several days,
Mm-hmm.
but, the power wasn't the worst of it, cause we could charge up our phones with the car.
Right.
But, not having cell reception was, that hurt a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And Upper Ojai is still without internet, so,
Really.
with no gas even for return.
Hmm. Wow.
So, I'm not sure how many emails they're getting up there, unless they're using their phone.
Right.
I know in many cases Marilyn Smith is making personal phone calls to the families that she knows can't receive internet and
Mm-hmm.
emails and things.
Yeah. So those were the areas I want to be sure that, 10 days into this disaster that we talked about today, we'll certainly have more conversations at future board meetings, talk about the consequences as well as things that we either reflect upon that were done well or things that we can improve upon.
Well, I have to say, from an initial standpoint, I'm sure it's a trite thing to say, but the response from this district has been awe-inspiring. And, the work that people have done and continue to do, I think demonstrates that we're a responsible member of the community, and that we bring value to the community beyond just the kiddos in the classroom. And I, as a relative newcomer to the town, I have to say, I'm just really proud to be affiliated with these people. I think you and everybody has done just a remarkable job in what could have been horrific circumstances. So I know we had another life lost in the last couple of days.
Right.
The sacrifices that people are making are really hard to intellectualize. So all I can say is well done, and you should be really proud of yourselves.
Agreed.
And I'd like to piggyback onto that, Michael, because I it actually went so much faster than I thought it would. I called all of my students today, and I got through about, I'd say 2/3. I left a lot of messages, but then I was able to speak to a lot of the kids as well. And they are so adorably resilient. I mean, I have to say, that's gonna make me cry more than anything else, just the sweetness of it, like, not the terror, but the sweetness of the parents, who most of them, I'd say half of them speak Spanish, so I use my horrible Spanish. And I just wanted to say how much I miss them, and I'm okay, and they were just saying, oh my Yestra, gracias por, and gracias a Dios, estamos bien, estamos perfecta, and they're saying, we're so good. So it was an overwhelming sense of not like, we're plugging along. They were just like, we're great. And I'm not trying to belittle anything anyone's going through. That's not the message. I just was like, wow.
Yeah.
They're so resilient and so strong, and they're like, we're really good. So I
Well,
think
yeah,
that's
when you're
such a
looking at
cool It's, yeah, everything's relative.
what could have been, and then
Everything-
suddenly you're like,
Exactly,
"We're fine."
but I mean in a cool way, you know, you guys are definitely there to help, and I know people will need it, which is awesome. But the cool response that I got just from my itty bitty classroom is just from one school, but it was overwhelmingly like, we're great. I thought that was so cool.
So everybody's just wrapping around each other, and I think that begins
Yeah.
the healing right away.
Right.
So we'll, you know,
Yeah.
we can help with the rest of it afterwards, but
Yeah,
the healing is already happening.
Yeah.
With each other.
absolutely.
And if you would like us to sign a resolution that says that we're done with catastrophes.
I know, boy.
Because I think we've had our fill in this district for
Yes,
this year.
we
I feel like you
Andy.
came into.
Yeah, same thing happened when you came in as assistant superintendent.
I'm not sure what I bring with me.
You do, that's a Superman vest underneath there. Okay, I think that's it for 6.1. If you came just for that, we'll give you a second to make your way out. I will go back to
And my daughter had her open heart surgery, and she's, like, we went home from her hospital for 1 day, but she's fantastic. So she had her second, yeah, so. I know. So she remembered class, oh my kids were all
2.3, we are electing a new governing board for the next school, or for beginning tonight through next December. And first, we need to elect a president, and so I'm going to move to elect Kevin, the current vice president, as the incoming board president.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Do
Aye.
I vote too?
Yeah.
Aye.
None opposed. So guess what? You get to do the other election. And I'm gonna move to the other side of Michael.
This is weird, because it says Jane Weil on it.
Or next time, Michael.
Okay, so moving on. So do we elect all the other positions as
Yeah,
well?
vice president.
So to vice president, I'll nominate Michael.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Well, Michael, congratulations as the newly minted president. Look forward to working with you. We're gonna take down the Senate anytime there's anything close.
Can we reconsider that?
And now, to elect our clerk, and I believe we established that there's a procedure for that. And, I would nominate Shelley.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously, Shelley has been elected and put on the conveyor belt. Now we're going to vote on the appointment of the superintendent,
We actually did that.
Okay.
So you can move to 7.4.1.
and that is the approval of the certification based on the first period interim financial report for the period ended October 31st, 2017. So do we have any discussion of that?
Yeah, we'll give a brief overview, and Patty can come to the podium. You guys know Patty now Nunez. She's
yes.
been our Director of Fiscal Services for just over a year now, started October 1 officially of last year, took over for Laura Maish. And really, this was first stab at first interim, because last year we had Laura still overlapping. And Patty did an absolutely terrific job, extremely proud of the quality of her work. And so I asked her actually to be the one to give the majority of this presentation. I'll interject a few thoughts coming at the end with our multi-year projection, but Patty's going to walk us through the relevant changes at this first interim. For those in the audience or watching at home, just a reminder, we approve our budget in June, our fiscal year, July 1 to June 30. We have 2 state mandated periods that we actually look back and make revisions to the budget that come to you. First interim comes in December, has to be approved by December 15th. That's one of the reasons that we had to have the scheduled meeting tonight, was make sure we had it approved in time. And then we have a second interim revision that we'll be looking at in March. In the past year and a half, we've chosen to also implement a third interim revision that we look at in May or early June. That's not required by the state, but we just believe that's the best accounting practices to really have a good look at the budget as we're wrapping up the fiscal year. So that's why this item's on the agenda tonight, and Patty can walk us through what the, again, relevant changes are, the important things to draw your attention to.
So in the packet, there was a memo where I explained a lot of the changes, but what we're actually gonna be looking at is the revision that looks like this. It's right after the packet.
Multiple packets.
I know, there's so many. It's right after the memo.
So if you're in the actual agenda packet for tonight's meeting, it's page 9 of 15 on item 7.4.1 is the start
I
of
don't have the
this.
page numbers. Yeah. Okay. So the first, what we're looking at is the actual revenues, and I just want to walk you through the first set of column of numbers where it says adopted at the top is what we brought forth over back in June for adoption. The second set of numbers is what I'm presenting to you today in changes, and then the last column is the difference between the two. And in the revenue side, like the one thing that I really want to point out is like right towards the middle of the page, an increase of 348,504. If you see that, it's under mandated cost. This is a one-time discretionary money that the state approved, I want to say in June, and we had already presented the budget for adopted, so we didn't get it in at that one time. This is one-time money. They keep saying that it's been like 3 years. They say it's one-time money, but we're considering as one time. And as far as the other revenues, there hasn't been any other changes other than just carry forward monies.
The Title I money is
Right.
significant because we had more.
It was slightly higher. We got a higher allocation, and then we had a lot of carry forward money from last year that we haven't spent.
And so that's where, Patty, as you appropriately said, you certainly see a lot of movement on this page if you're looking between the adoption and first interim. A lot of that movement, though, is simply what we, call our carry forwards from the prior year. So in Title I, we had, it was actually over $100,000 unspent, right?
110.
110,000 unspent from last year.
Mhm.
And so we show that in the revenue line here, we end up at unaudited actuals, we actually pulled it out of our revenue at that time, and so that's why you end up seeing a higher Title I revenue for this current year.
And there's no requirement to spend it?
For
within the
Title
year?
I, it's a
20%.
Yeah, 20% spend.
20%.
Or 20% you can have carry forward. So each individual categorical fund has a limit on the amount that you can carry forward.
And it's not brought up in adoption because obviously we still haven't closed the book, so we don't know how much is gonna be carried forward.
Right.
So that's what's not presented at that time. So is there any other questions on the revenue side? There's none, then I'll go over to the expenditure side, which is the next page. So most of these expenditures we did bring at adopted budget with the changes being primarily from those carry forward monies that we had, like Title I expenses that the sites employ extra hourly teachers or all the other categorical, for example, our CTE money, our VC Innovates, all that carry forward money we allocated in either teacher salaries or materials and supplies, so that this is where you'll see a lot of the shift and the changes from what we adopted and what we have in revision 1. Is there any questions on the expenditure
I
side?
just have a question about the retiree benefits.
Right.
Because I would think that would be predictable, very predictable, and we were about 50,000 off.
Right, and so this is, the revision is including everything until the end of the fiscal year, so we have a number of employees that are being retired. For example, Jody Heath is retiring, we have,
So that accounts more for people who are retiring that we didn't count on.
right, that we did not know at the time that we adopted the budget.
It's not so much a change in
It's
the
not-
benefits, it's
Right,
a
it's
change
not a
in
premium
people.
change, it's
Mhm.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
And under the textbooks and the materials and supplies, the
Mhm.
extra 100, how did we not know about that 108,000?
At adopted budget, we did bring in, at the very bottom, we put in, we did assign money for the donation accounts. And again, that's another area we're still not sure how much we're gonna carry forward. So on the unrestricted side is like the donation money. And then on the restricted side, it could be attributed to Title I money, carry forward money that we have to allocate into either materials or supplies, or it goes into salaries, and that really depends on how the school sites are trying to figure out where to spend the money.
I have to confess, I didn't follow that. So are you saying that, that this is really a question of where you're allocating it? So if we see a bump over at textbooks, it doesn't necessarily mean that we didn't account for this as an expense in the first place. It just means that we're changing where we're putting it?
Well, we're putting it because we have carryover money from last year that we didn't spend, so we're putting it in the budget at the first interim revision. Honestly, the 4,300 is like a placeholder where we put a lot of the money in just to balance what money was left over from last year and just put it in the budget in materials and supplies.
So that's also showing up somewhere on revenue as well? If we
Well,
didn't spend it and we thought we were, you know.
Right, like for the Title I, if you go back to the other page, we do have Title I money, and it increased from adopted to revision 1, and that's the carry forward money.
Okay.
So we'll jump to the end, and then we'll make our way back here just to help you guys understand. Perhaps this is certainly not unusual. I mean, this is what we see each year, but just to
Our
point
not
out,
understanding this has nothing to do with me being president.
so if it's okay, I'll just jump in here and just point out, if you go to that page 11 of 15, this is where we really get to what I think we all care most about, which is our bottom line. So if you look, I believe your pages should have a highlighted box about the other way down the page. That's our beginning balance. So first thing you'll note is that we have an increase in our beginning fund balance this year, or I'm sorry, at this first interim revision, and that's because we closed the books at a higher dollar amount than expected. So you'll see our beginning balance increased by $273,000 between what we were expecting to have when we adopted the budget compared to now. You'll see that our actual net increase, which in this case is actually we're deficit spending this year, that's the box directly above it. We were anticipating deficit spending this year by $858,000. That number is dropped by $200,000. So we actually now are anticipating a reduced deficit of $646,000. So the big, bottom line number, I think the most important takeaway from this is actually the projected ending fund balance. You'll see that in unrestricted revenues, we were projecting a $1.4 million unrestricted ending fund balance. And now we've increased that to approximately 1.9 million. So we actually are increasing by nearly $500,000. And again, the reason for that is both a larger beginning balance to start this year as well as improved deficit spending. The biggest reason for the improvement on deficit spending was because of that one-time dollars, that $385,000 or so. And so the real movement, even though you see lots of changes between this budget and the adopted budget, most of that, almost all of it, is accounted for by increase in revenues, increase in expenditures. We have a carry forward in Title I, so you see you see an increase in the 4,300 for restricted, or you see an increase in 2,100. That's our hourly classified support for Title I. So
in other words,
when you
like
when you have all of that movement go away, what you really are looking at is about $100,000 increase in expenditures right now relative to where we were planning, and half of that is the retiree benefits. So not really, even though it looks like there's a lot more movement here, the real material change is really minimal.
So in terms of the three, whatever it is, the extra one-time funds.
Right.
You can't just put that into your reserves. You have to show it in expenses somewhere.
Well, no. So ultimately, it all does flow down to our bottom line, and so that's why you're seeing that ending fund balance increasing by $485,000. So no, the one-time money it's revenue to the district, and so if we have expenditures to coincide with that, then by all means, we'll have the expenditure. Otherwise, it just drops into our bottom line, into the ending fund balance.
But it sounds like the 4,300 line, includes some contingencies as well, or is that all allocated, the extra 100,000?
Do you want to take a stab at that one?
For Title I, we have to budget what we actually get an allocation. So yes, so whatever revenues are coming in, we have to show that we're spending it that
The
year.
Title I money has to
Title
be
I, so-
allocated,
right,
and
and
not
it-
to a reserve, but to a line item.
Right,
Yeah.
and that holds true for the VC Innovates money and the CTE money.
Right. So it has to be allocated, so we're allocating it there. We may spend it, we may not, but it's allocated.
But it's allocated, yes, correct.
Yeah, so to answer directly the question of, is there a kind of built-in buffer there? If the question is, can we tell you every single item that we plan on spending that's currently showing in that budget 4,300? The answer is absolutely not. Well, that's not how we have to build the budget, based on the requirements that in order to realize the revenue, you have to have an offsetting expenditure. So right now, what she was saying earlier is we kind of park it in that 4,300 for now until we actually know where the expenditure for Title I is going to be. It might end up being that Myers Oaks chooses to bring in an extra hourly support person to help, targeted intervention for, 3 to 5 students. And so at that time, the money would be moved up into that hourly support budget item. But in order to show the revenue, we have to have an offsetting expenditure. On the unrestricted side, that shouldn't be taking place as much, except for some of the unrestricted revenue sources that, we legally call unrestricted, but we all would agree that, again, First Fives, Neighborhood for Learning money, even though it's unrestricted, to us it's completely restricted. We could never touch scholarship money for preschoolers and use it for something else. So there are things also like donation accounts that are in that unrestricted category, but there might be money that we're having to sit in a place until we hear from Catherine's PTO at Miramani that they want to use the money for a particular purpose. But other than that, certainly, again, we don't park money, or we don't have just a line item where we're realizing or putting a potential expenditure if there isn't actually a known expenditure when it comes to the general unrestricted budget.
Right. Well, I want to say that the way you've laid out the numbers here is terrific. And before the last couple of years, we wouldn't have been able to ask these kinds of questions. So this is a vast improvement over what we had years ago in terms of being able to see and analyze. And it's great that we can go into this kind of, and sound, relatively intelligent and talking about some of this stuff, because before, the way the state of California requires us to lay out these numbers, nobody in their right mind could figure it out. So this is great, and I think the question arose because of the change, but at least I feel like I have a better understanding that we get more money from Title I and other categories. We have to allocate it. It's allocated. That's great.
Yeah. And I have a great mentor.
I know, unfortunately, I studied all this 2 weeks ago, because we were supposed to have a meeting
Right,
10 days
right.
ago. So now I'm like, wait, what?
Oh, yeah.
This total expenditures
You mean your
are
mind has
still-
been elsewhere for the past 2 weeks off of this?
I still don't get, am I reading this correctly? On the total expenditures, total change is an additional $520,000 that we're spending, that we did not allocate on June 30th.
That's correct.
Yes.
But on the revenue side, you'll see that we have an increase far in excess of the $335,000 one-time monies. We actually have nearly $700,000 in increased revenues.
Right.
So again, where you see those increased revenues, there's no other than a small amount coming for Title I. There's no other new revenue source that we weren't previously planning on in July or June. The changes for revenue realized here was revenues that we have as carry forwards into this year.
And if I understood you correctly, we don't recognize the carry forwards until Rev 1, because we don't know what they are.
Exactly.
The budget
Exactly.
gets.
That's exactly right.
And there are expenses also that are not in the initial budget, because you don't have the revenue to balance them.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Very well said.
Yes.
And because we're required to allocate monies, there may be carry forwards next year,
There's gonna be.
There.
but that's not something we can talk about until we get there.
Right.
Well, because obviously I look at, what we've been talking about for the last couple of years is teachers' salary, increase in salaries, so,
Mhm.
and we wanna try to keep these revisions from being so different from the original. So I look at 520,000, I think, okay, could we have spent that on teachers? So I go back in, just telling you how I do it, I go, okay, well, we spent 100,000 of that on teachers or support classified staff in the classrooms, right? It's 28 or 27 and a half, 64.
Which, just to note, we categorize it as teachers, but almost all of that is actually gonna be either hourly support, almost all of it's gonna be hourly support, because again, these are focused on restricted revenue sources, again, Title I or VC Innovates or some of those programs, and so it's absolutely going toward certificate support, but may not necessarily be going toward OFT members, because it might be going toward a non-bargaining unit hourly support for, again, a particular intervention.
And then another 134 for benefits, which we can't change. And then the 166 for supplies, but that's where you said you're putting that money. So then really, what we've decided to spend more money on is $7,000. And then 57,000, I think that was a bus, right? For the equipment?
No, this is for the welding.
This is
Oh,
actually the
yes,
VC
yes,
Innovate
VC
money,
Innovates
the
money.
VC
Yeah,
Innovate
VC
money
Innovate
for Fender Carnine's class at the high school, the welding.
And that's also the tuition, the 61, that's also a CTE, I think, right? The 7,100?
The 7,100, this is for our kiddos that are out being serviced outside of the district for what they have special needs.
So
Does that all speak though to why do we have the carry forward? Doesn't the carry forward reflect money that you had thought you would spend but you didn't?
Yeah, I think some of that.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have a carry forward, doesn't that, hadn't we planned on spending that money? Wasn't it not expected to carry forward? Or am I wrong about that?
No, I mean, we knew that, for instance, VC Innovates, that we were not gonna be spending all of the, what was a multi-year allocation wasn't gonna be spent in a single year. So there are,
So the way we create our budgets, we don't allocate all earmarked money or what's the term? The money that's, has to be used.
Restricted.
Restricted. But we also don't indicate that there's a particular carry forward. We just sort of wait until we see what the carry forward is.
so what you'll see at budget adoption is when we're able to have a better sense of what certain carry forwards are. So if we're on page 11 to 15, you'll note there are a couple carry forwards listed where what we do is we say designated for, and you'll see that we actually had of the unrestricted funding sources, $71,000 was actually their donation accounts that we knew were going to be carrying forward, $71,000 in various donations that were not going to be spent last year, and so that's a part of the designated for. Now you'll see that money has totally gone away at this adopted budget. That's because she's actually put it back into planned expenditures. So we do have some at the budget adoption. We do know of certain carry forwards that we are aware of. You would see more of these at the unaudited actuals. You'll start seeing again that designated for line item having more items that are restricted use categories.
So this probably, for the most part, doesn't reflect, hey, we thought we'd spend X amount on Y, we didn't, so now it becomes a carry forward, and now we allocate it differently.
It could be that. It could also be we anticipated spending, purchasing Y in fiscal year 17,
Right.
and we weren't able to get the purchase in June, and so now it's actually hitting in the 17-18 fiscal year. So there are some things that we may have budgeted for with the intention of actually spending last year, and we just weren't able to get in under the fiscal calendar, or there may have been things that we didn't necessarily have an intention of spending, but to show the revenue in the year that's being allocated to us, we identify it here, and then once it ends up getting rolled forward into the following year, we actually are capturing the revenue that year.
And one thing that comes up, and maybe it's overly technical, but you made the point about, for example, donation accounts as being unrestricted, but really sort of morally restricted.
Right.
Why not handle them as restricted? I mean, why not?
Everything you see on here is told to us by California Department of Education.
Okay, so it's just a,
School
it's a
accounting
legal
code, stuff,
regime.
exactly. So like I said, also the Neighborhood for Learning, which has $200,000 come to it by tobacco taxes, servicing, the first 5 in Ojai Valley, and 66,000 of that is for preschool program scholarships. Another bit of it is for the director. They have their completely separate board. For us, though, it's coming in as a unrestricted revenue, even though you guys never actually have, you never see their budget, you never approve the actual expenditures except for on the consent calendar. But that's something the state deems as unrestricted to the school district, even though we are only a pass-through entity for a completely, separate entity. So it's a matter of the state telling us, based on the way that they code the, dollars coming to us, that we have to actually recognize it in a certain way.
But you're pretty confident, I take it, and Cheryl too, that we have like a, so to speak, among the organizations that raise money and eat what you kill philosophy. I mean, we, for example, if a sport raised money for the sport, we're not gonna take some of that money and give it elsewhere. We're gonna let those people that raise that money keep that money. While it's not restricted in a technical sense,
Right.
we consider it restricted in a, again, for lack of a better word, moral sense.
Well-
They were the ones who raised it.
Absolutely, although there are times.
And I hear the sirens, and it makes me wonder.
Certainly that's true in almost all instances. There are a few rare ones of where we know that, for instance, cheerleading always has a very significant expense on the front end of their program to purchase their uniforms. And so they actually might technically, although no one would know this, the dollars might be in the account from the preceding year, and then the girls or boys, fundraising, during their first few months of being in cheerleading. And so they believe that money is going toward paying their uniform. Technically, it's actually replenishing the fund, so that way next year there's a fund that is able to be used for the next year's, team to be able to purchase. So there are some areas where that's the case, of where, they actually had a amount set up so that way they could have something that was a high expense at the front end be able to be paid for without a district having to, start issuing loans. And then they are backfilling that account. But that's the, minute detail of the exception. The reality is that, almost exclusively everything is, if a PTA fundraises it, their goal is to certainly spend it on the families who are involved in its fundraising. And when there's an athletic program, same thing.
This is where I ask if there's any further discussion and whether we would like to vote. Everyone ready to vote?
Anything else that we needed to point out?
No, Andy, you did a great job with the bottom line, but I think we have the multi-year.
Yeah, so let's hop to the multi-year real quick, then we'll just hit a few key areas on that. So that's starting on technically starts on page 12, where we list some of our assumptions. And you'll see there where what we would need to do, what reductions we'd need to make in order to have a balanced budget for the next 2 years. So even though the takeaway here.
Sorry, just to be clear, is this just additional information, or are we actually gonna end up voting on the multi-year as well?
It's all part of the same packet.
Okay.
So the
And that's
multi-year
part
is
of
something that you also
what we
approve.
have. Okay.
Exactly, that's correct. So this is page 12 of 15 of the same agenda item. The board is required anytime we have a budget adoption, whether it's, actual adoption or interim revisions, that you also, to make sure that we're remaining, fiscally responsible and appropriate stewards, that we can project a budget that remains solvent for the next 2 years. In our case, we know that we have continued declining enrollment. We know that we're going to have continued reduction in revenue while having forced increases in expenditures from the continued increases in health insurance, from increases in PERS and STIRS. And so we do know that in order to remain solvent for the next 2 years, we are going to have to make some significant reductions in expenditures. This certainly is not intended to be a staffing plan or an expenditure plan. This is just what we've done historically in order to show a balanced budget, is assuming that all of those reductions came on the backs of personnel. Again, that's not going to be the case. We're doing everything we can to obviously avoid having that be the case, instead to increase revenue where we can, like we did with our Feed Our Kids, Fund Our Schools initiative this year, as well as finding ways to reduce non-personnel expenditures. But if you're on page 12 of 15, 2 lines above the highlight toward the middle of the page, you'll see personnel reductions. In 18-19, in order to maintain a balanced budget, we'd be looking at over $500,000 in reductions that need to be made. The year following, even after making that initial round of reductions, we'd have to make another $750,000 reduction. And that has in the third year us ending the year with absolutely zero reserve above the state minimum, although we do maintain the state minimum 3% in this scenario. So you can see if you look down below the highlighted line, if this were to come purely through reductions in personnel, the personnel reductions that'd be required to make this reduction. So that would be nearly 8 teachers, 6 or so classified staff, and an administrator and a half or so. So I want to point this out just as a reminder of, even though the fact that what we're presenting here for this current year budget revision is anticipating a higher ending fund balance than we were previously, this doesn't eliminate the need for us to continue to deficit spend and to make some very challenging choices in the spring.
Did you allocate, or whoever did this, allocate among teachers classified and management on the basis of the pro rata share of the total budget?
Exactly, and that's how we've done it for the past few years.
Obviously,
exactly.
that could change as well.
That's absolutely correct. So again, this is not a staffing plan by any means. It's not to suggest that if we do need to make these reductions,
Right.
that this is how it would take place. It was done by exactly as you said. It was a prorate share based on the overall personnel cost for each of the 3 employee groups.
But if we had to do it, that's close to 10% reduction, I think, right? Of the,
In the last year, yeah.
yeah. It
We
was around 8 million.
Well, no, I'm
we
sorry.
spent on personnel.
no, it'd be between the 2 years combined about $1.4 million in reductions, and we're currently at about $26 million budget. So it'd be
Right, but the personnel component of the budget. Oh, it is much higher because it's.
you have to include the 3,000 as well, the benefit piece.
I was looking just at the.
Yeah, what's the ballpark benefits and salary, total cost for personnel?
Of our overall budget?
Yeah.
It's about 85% for us, so that would put us at 22.5 million or so.
I was looking only at teacher salaries.
Yeah, so if you do all of teachers, all of classified, and also all of the 3,000, once you pull all those together, that's why in a service industry like us, again, we do need to start making reductions. That the non-personnel reductions, 4% of that is utilities. Can't make too many reductions in utilities. Although we're trying hard, we're obviously bringing in Climate Tech to do that work, and we're still exploring PV as a possibility for Measure J. So, we're going to try to find the reductions we can on non-personnel, but obviously a larger amount than we desire is going to have to come from personnel reductions. Now, part of that can actually fairly easily be absorbed, because when you do have fewer students, you do have, you can have, if you lose 30 students and you reduce your workforce by 1 teacher, there's actually no impact on class sizes. In fact, in that scenario, there's still maybe an improvement in class sizes if it was a 30-1 ratio. We already know of some retirements, so we're going to do everything we can to have any reductions required to be through attrition rather than actual layoff. But again, we're going to have some conversations in the spring about how we approach this structural deficit that we have.
This may be premature, but I'm in talking with, and I should have asked the staff when they were here, in talking with the families, are we gonna lose families through this fire? Are they coming back to Ojai? Do we have any ideas?
So I think that's premature to speculate. We again have 26 students on a base of 2440. I mean, that's over 1% of our students. If we were to lose those kiddos, that would certainly have a major impact on the culture of our schools, and to a much less important note, it would also have an impact on our budget. But I think it's too soon to tell. Frankly, I mean, my concerns for this community, while they're great for those who have lost their home, I'm extremely concerned. I, again, was on the phone with a council member earlier today, and I also was talking to Mayor Johnston up at Summit today. A lot of concern for the smaller businesses here in town that don't have business continuity insurance coverage. And so, these last couple weeks and this entire, what's supposed to be the most profitable season of the year and a very high touristy time, is an area that they're missing out on a significant amount of revenue. So I actually just heard that the inn is going to be closed until the 11th, is the earliest that they're looking at reopening, because they're going to be doing the same cleaning that we're doing here. So.
And the Oaks too, I believe.
Yeah, I actually, one of my neighbors said that they were laying off staff and didn't know when they'd be reopening.
I have to say, I thought the inn made that decision after the district did, and I thought that that was a real affirmation of the reasonableness of our decision in the district, because they're gonna lose millions
Right.
and millions of dollars with that decision. They clearly wouldn't have done it if they had an alternative, and
Right, right,
the city's gonna lose
yeah,
some serious money too.
absolutely is.
I just
So-
remember after the floods 10 years ago, when there was the flooding, about 10 years ago, we did lose
Yeah,
families. And I don't know how significant that was. That would be a Kathy question.
yeah,
But, I just wondered.
yeah, no, I'm sure it will have an impact.
She's at a dinner party, let's call her.
She's hosting it even, not the staff.
She's got a headset.
For
I was
those
hoping you'd call.
thinking about coming here and shopping from the outside, it's wonderfully quiet and nice. Really a great
And the
environment.
people around town, you can't hear them because of the mask.
Right.
The fire truck was Sulphur Mountain Road, a home.
Really.
Oh, no.
So does anyone have anything further that they'd like to discuss on this item? And if not, we are asked to approve certification of the district's 2017 and 18 first period interim report and resolution number 17-18-10. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve, as stated by the president.
I'll second.
And all in favor? Aye. Unanimously approved. We go now to 7.4.8. Thank you so much.
I'm gonna leave this for the signature.
Okay, great, thank you,
I
Patty.
just send it
Now
out.
it's a certification of the signatures. They're not all signed. Should we sign them and then do this?
We do that after.
We do,
okay,
so
yeah.
we'll do this later. Should we do
We'll
this?
do the signatures
Okay.
later, but we'll actually approve the certification of authorized signers now.
Okay, so we know who those authorized signers are. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
I will second.
I'll-
All those, Jane? Jane?
I'm taking it over.
One last time, Jane, come on, one last time.
Come on.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, again. We move on now to 7.5.1, emergency resolution to approve the entering of the contracts related to cleanup. That's my summary of that. You kind of talked about it already, I think.
Right, so again, our insurance is covering all expenses associated with the cleanup, but we still are required to pass this resolution to avoid having to go through the formal bid process, which requires newspaper advertising and multiple weeks of receiving bids, and would ultimately delay us from starting school by at least a month.
Anyone have any
I'll move.
comments? Someone want to make a motion?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. And now we move to the governing board meeting dates for 2018. Everyone's had a look at those, I trust, and we've added a couple dates. I know, Jane, do you want to speak to that in terms of, I think you have, at least one of those is planned to be something to do with the start time, right?
Well, I didn't see that did we actually add them on?
I thought there are.
We added January 17th, 2018, so we are required to have the SIPSas, the single plans, go to the county by January 20th, and so rather than try to, since we were gonna have the elementary schools presented in our December board meeting, rather than have all elementary and secondary at a single meeting on January 9th, we have proposed a second date. It is on a Wednesday, to avoid conflicts with the city or hopefully with VCCCD.
Just keep on putting Z's and D's in there.
Lots of V's.
So, any conversation on that?
Well, and then I would like sometime in either February or March to add another date, but we can just add that. We don't have to vote on it tonight, right? We could just add it.
So we can always ask special meeting, if the purpose of the special meeting is to, discuss a topic like the hearing the results of and then deliberating on the school start time committee, that would be something that could be scheduled at any time. Things like the SIPSas actually have to be approved at regularly scheduled board meetings, so that's why we have this one included at this time.
Okay.
If you want to look at adding a second or a third board meeting in the spring because of the number of items that we have forthcoming, it's always better to have it on this schedule because again, you have more that you can accomplish on a meeting that's regularly scheduled at this organizational meeting. But ultimately, again, you have the flexibility at any time with 24-hour notice to call a meeting.
I personally would prefer us waiting until our next meeting to talk about when that additional meeting should be. My reason being my phone died, and I don't have my calendar with me, and it would be fruitless for me to just guess.
Okay.
But also maybe at that point, we'll have a better idea of when we might wanna do
Yeah, if
it.
Kathy can send out
Sure.
notices to
yeah.
everyone, then
Of
maybe we
course.
can come
But
with
does
them.
that mean it's a regularly scheduled meeting, or are we then having
It
to
will not
call it
be,
a
but
special
again, if
meeting?
Well, if we wait to our next regularly scheduled meeting to schedule it, then we're okay, right?
I'll check with our attorney. I think that it would still be deemed a specially called meeting, but I'll check on that. But again, for the
Let's-
majority of the things I think that we're looking at potentially an additional meeting being for, we'd be fine to have it at a specially called meeting.
I'm sorry, I guess I missed, what is your notion of the restriction that we have when we're doing a special meeting? That it,
So there are certain things, we had to actually get approval from the county to even have this budget at a specially called meeting. Today is technically considered a specially called meeting because it's not the actual scheduled last week. Because of the fires, they allowed us to still have the governing board agenda item, the election of Mr. President, and the interim revision. Those are supposed to be done at a regularly scheduled board meeting. And so there are things like that you can't do at specially called board meetings. But again, if the idea of a specially called meeting might be to simply discuss or deliberate or explore something in more detail at that meeting, and then you actually would maybe have a follow-up meeting where you'd have an opportunity to vote on the item, then you certainly be fine in that case. And you still can vote on many things during specially called, so without knowing exactly what the content of the meetings would be, we likely would still be fine.
But January 9th, 17th, February 13th, at those meetings, we could schedule another meeting with no restrictions, right?
no, it becomes a special meeting.
Well, what's a special meeting? Is
I
it
don't
the- is it
understand
the-
this
the
then.
notice period?
I don't think it's a significant, my
Right.
sense of this
Yeah.
is, this is like money, it's fungible. We can put anything we want into all these dates that are regular scheduled meetings and make sure that anything that needs to be done in a regular meeting will be done on one of these many dates we have. I haven't counted them, but there's a lot.
Yeah.
And then if we feel that we need extra time for some extra subject, that's the whole point of having a special meeting, so I don't see an issue.
I
That's
would
correct.
like to understand though, there's only one day of the year when we can schedule the meetings for the next year?
I'll get a
That
legal
doesn't seem-
opinion from
that doesn't
the
seem right
Brown Act.
for-
I know.
for something.
It's government, Thane.
Oh, wow. Well,
That's so
that
thin
makes
though,
sense.
to be angry with that, it's like, that's just stupid.
I will get confirmation of my understanding.
I'll move to approve these dates.
I'll second, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Is someone keeping track of?
I am.
So now we,
Because we'll get in trouble.
now we have the election of the school board representative to the Ventura County Nominating Committee on School District Organization.
I would like to speak on this.
That would be great.
So I've been the rep the last 2 years, and I certainly can continue to do it, but I was gonna ask Michael if he would consider, because the meetings are at 5 o'clock in Camarillo,
Oh,
and they last 10 minutes.
oh.
So. I
And the
figure
stipend is
you're-
$2,500.
I mean, it's literally, I think, either in your building or down the street, I don't know exactly where
Probably
you are,
BCOE,
but
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
It's pretty close.
Whether you'd be willing to, and if
Yeah,
you
yeah.
couldn't do it, I could step in, I
Sure.
guess, I don't
Could-
know how that works.
Could you speak to what it is?
Yeah, so you vote on who's representing not your district, but your
Our
region
area, yeah.
at the things they vote at up in Sacramento, I guess. So it's literally once a year and you're voting, and of course, there's never a contest, really. I mean, there's 2 openings and there's 2 people running, but they need a quorum in order to get them voted in.
And doesn't it come in front of this board first anyway?
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we vote on it, and then you go down and
You
vote
tell,
what
we
you're,
say who
what-
to vote for.
yeah.
And most of the time we say, we don't know.
We read their bios.
so would,
Yeah,
if you
I'd be
would
willing to do
consider
that, sure,
it,
yeah. Sounds like a huge load.
So with Michael's gracious acceptance, and by the way, thank you, Jane, for having done that. It sounds like you made some trips down there for
In
10
the
minutes.
rain one time.
Yeah. It's like the mock trial organizational meeting that I went down for, and I literally got there, and they said, okay, we're here. Does anyone have any questions? And I was like, no, pretty much we're good. It's like, okay, well, see you later. It's like, I just came from Ojai, for God's sakes. So, all those in favor of.
I'm sorry, do we
Wait,
have a
I need
motion and a second?
first.
Sorry?
I'll move to nominate Michael.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Unanimously elected. Congratulations, Michael. Superintendent's report, do you have more?
You know what? I actually am going to not have any more to comment on right now.
You're gonna Bangser this?
Yeah, I'm gonna Bangser it, yeah.
Wait, we don't have, these other things don't require this, we don't have a consent calendar tonight, or do we?
We do,
Oh, we
but
do.
that comes
That's
after.
next, yeah.
Okay, okay.
That was not a derogatory comment. It's just Hank always said, you know, it's sometimes I've talked enough and I'm not gonna say more. So we move to the consent calendar. Anyone with questions, comments? Do we have anyone wanna
I
make
didn't
a
realize we
motion?
lost Katie at Topa.
Well, she's coming
Well, we
upstairs.
gained her at the district office.
I understand, but from my perspective, all right, that was my only comment.
Katie is incredible, although Amy Font is moving over, and so now
I hear great things about her too.
she is excellent.
I look forward to getting to know her.
I'll move to approve.
I will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And with that, we are adjourned.
All the